We have a great day for you planned today. So those who were able to join us in person and those who are online through Zoom, I have a camera on me here for those who are watching. We have guest speakers who are online. You'll be able to watch them obviously from anywhere. This will be on a link that you can join at any time to see. But with our guest speakers, just wanted to mention two things. We have time allocation for several guest speakers. This will be divided into two segments. The first segment will be from the state of New Mexico and various state departments. They will have till 10:40 to share the information that would be helpful for you. At 10:40 to 10:50, only 10 minutes, we'll have a Q&A. So you have the time right now to submit your questions. We have Irene, Francisco that you can write questions to and submit if you're here in person. If you're online, you can submit your questions in the chat box. Irene and my assistants will go through those questions. Because we have 10 minutes, we'll only go through a few of these questions, but we also have a link in the chat room or on economic development webpage that you can find the contact information for all these backgrounds. And so with no further ado, there's a bit of feedback here, but hopefully looks like we control that. Okay, so with no further ado, why don't we begin with our guest speakers. First, to introduce New Mexico Regulation and Licensing Department, Mr. Robert Sachs. He is the Deputy Director of Policy in the Cannabis Control Division. Thank you, Mr. Sachs.
Thank you all. Happy to be here with you all today to answer some questions and to give you an overview of what we're doing here at the Cannabis Control Division. Obviously, as licenses are promulgated and administered through us, I'm sure you all have a lot of questions on what our process is and how we can get those licenses out to you. So I'm very happy to get that information out to you all. I'm not sure if the slides that we submitted will be posted, or if not, I can share my screen. So if the panelists wouldn't mind letting me know how I should proceed, that'd be great. Okay, well, in that case, as we're figuring it out, I'll go ahead and go through the material. So I do have a slide deck that I've submitted, and hopefully we can get that available to you, whether or not that will be during this actual presentation, or we can follow up with you all afterwards and send this to you all. I'm happy to do that. But essentially, just to start off, to give you an overview of the New Mexico Regulation and Licensing Department, we are a department, obviously, that focuses on regulation and licensing, no surprise there. And beyond cannabis, we regulate and license alcohol establishments, barbers, tattoo artists, acupuncturists, pharmacists. Really, if someone in the state of New Mexico needs to get a license, they generally will come through us. So we're very happy to be able to expand the licenses that we are offering now to cannabis. And to start off, to give you kind of an overview of the legislation and the tasks that the legislature gave to the department. So as you all know, or maybe you don't, but a special legislative session was called this last year in 2021 that was passed and gave us as a division, well, first it created the division and also gave us certain statutory deadlines to meet, to have applications And rules, we call rules or regulations rules. It's the same term that we use at RLD. So we were given statutory deadlines to, oh, there it is, perfect. So I am on slide 2, if you wouldn't mind navigating there. Perfect, thank you so much. So our statutory deadlines, the first one was September 1st to issue producer licenses. We met that. January 1, all other licenses. We do have manufacturer licenses available, retail licenses, courier licenses, both micro business producer licenses, integrated micro vertically integrated micro businesses, and vertically integrated cannabis establishments licenses all ready to go. Those are all on our website, and I'll explain the differences between those in a second. On our website, there on that second box, you can see ccd.rld.state.nm.us. If you navigate down to on our homepage, in the center of the page, there's a portion that says quick links, and it'll say apply or renew a license. You can click on that and find all of our applications. Most of them are on a Salesforce platform, and a couple of them are in a PDF form that you download and send back to us. Everything is online, and or has to be done via the computer if it's a PDF form. So just keep that in mind, but all the instructions are on the applications. So some licenses that are yet to come, cannabis consumption areas. We do have a cannabis consumption area license up and available for those that have retail spaces, but we're going to amend that to just be standalone cannabis consumption area licenses. Cannabis server permits, which go along with cannabis consumption areas. So essentially a permit for a person to actually serve within a cannabis consumption area, and training and education programs. So if we could go to the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, I see that someone said if we could give the website again. It is CCD, as in Cannabis Control Division, .rld.state.nm.us. It's there in that second box on the screen for those of you that are participating or who can see the screen. And we will also be repeating this URL throughout the presentation. So if you Google Cannabis Control Division, New Mexico, you'll also find our page. So these are our licenses that are available. As you can see, we have Courier, which is essentially a transportation license, taking cannabis and cannabis product from a retailer to the consumer. This is not business to business transportation. This is, if you think of kind of DoorDash or Uber Eats, that's what that license is. It's, taking the product to the consumer. Testing laboratories will actually test the cannabis and cannabis product for potency, for pesticides, for any sort of contaminants, for residual solvents that are in the cannabis after any sort of extractive activities. We have manufacturers who take cannabis and turn them into cannabis products, edibles, tinctures, topicals, pre-rolls, things of that nature. Producers are growers. Retailers are retailers. Research laboratories will actually research cannabis to kind of see if there are any sort of uses that we don't know yet, whether that is for medical, commercial. So that's an exciting license type. We also have vertically integrated cannabis establishments, which allow for multiple functions within one license. So you would be able to grow, manufacture, sell, and courier under that license. You can kind of mix and match within those four, however many of those functions you want to do. If you only wanted to manufacture and retail, for example, or just produce and retail, it's kind of up to the applicant themselves. Then we have cannabis producer micro business, which is the same idea. You can have multiple functions. However, the cost of your license is lower. This is meant for people breaking into the industry. There's no per plant fee, which I'll touch on in a second. However, there are some restrictions for this license type. You can only grow up to 200, and you are restricted to one production site, one manufacturer site, and one retail site. That all can be on one premise itself, but you can't have like 3 different grow sites or 3 different retail sites, 3 different manufacturer. It has to be one premise per activity. And very lastly, we have cannabis consumption area, which, as the name suggests, is the place where consumers and medical patients can consume cannabis safely. If you think of it almost like a bar in the alcohol setting, that is cannabis consumption area. So if we could move to the next slide, please. As I mentioned, there's a plant fee associated with producers. So if you're growing more than 200 plants, you will have a producer license and an associated plant fee. So plant fees are $10. So for every plant that you'll be growing, you have to pay a $10 fee. And keep in mind that the plant fee is actually the maximum amount of plants that you can have at any one time throughout your license. So let's say you have 500 plants approved from the division. Thinking about grow cycles of the plant, especially if you're doing an indoor grow, you can have multiple cycles. You will actually be able to grow more, assuming that you do, hit that 500, and let's say you turn 2 to 3 grow cycles throughout the year. But what you're paying for that plant fee is the maximum allowable number of plants that you can have at any one time. One thing to keep in mind, you'll see that there's a per plant fee and that says adult use and per plant fee medical. If you as a licensee have decided, and this is true of any license, if you've decided that you are exclusively going to be growing, manufacturing, retailing, whatever your function is, exclusively for medical patients, all of your licensing fees will be cut in half. So if you do have any sort of product that's going to go to the adult use market, recreational market, as some people say, your licensing fees will be that $10 for plant count fee. On the previous page, you saw that there were anywhere from $500 to $2,500, and that's the adult use fees. So if you did exclusively medical, and the application will ask you whether or not you're growing, manufacturing, or retailing exclusively medical, then your licensing fees will be cut in half, and that's true of the plant fee as well. Next slide, please. All right, so as I mentioned, our application will be online. Some of the general information that we'll be requesting is contact information of the applicant, so the person who's filling out the application, the controlling persons themselves, so people in the business who own 10% more in the company. We'll be asking for the address, just general information on the location. If you're a producer or a manufacturer, we'll be asking for water usage, an energy and water and energy savings plan, the number of plants that you are proposing to grow, and regardless of the license type that you are submitting, you'll have to show a diagram of the premises. Just kind of showing the boundaries of the property, the boundaries of the building, the doors, windows, internal walls. All of this information is housed both in our rules, and also we have checklists on our website. If you go to that same licensing page, it says apply or renew a license, you can find checklists that will go through what information that you'll need. And then lastly, there are certifications and attestations at the end, and this is really, really important, and I want to highlight for you all. I put an asterisk there. I should actually put several asterisks just to kind of show the importance of them. So we're, rather than having the applicant submit documentation showing, for example, standard operating procedures, we're having you all certify and attest to the fact that you all have those in place, whether that's related to employee safety, whether that's related to security requirements. These are conditions of licensure. So when our compliance officers visit licensed premises and they see that something that was certified or attested to is actually not being implemented, that could potentially result in a revocation of a license. So it's really important to read the application carefully. Next slide, please. And sorry, one more slide. As we're working on moving the presentation forward, I just kind of wanted to go over, as we've seen so far, our applications have been open for a few months now, and we have seen some common deficiencies in applications. So I just wanted to highlight those for you all now, so you can kind of think of those as you're getting your application materials together and hopefully avoid some of these. So the number one application deficiency is related to water. And this is a relatively complicated issue depending on what type of water source you have. If you are connected to municipal water sources, it's actually a very straightforward process. You need to get a letter from your municipal water provider stating that you can use the water for your licensed purpose, whether that's production or growing or manufacturing. If you are not connected to municipal water, and you are trying to use water rights, we will need, we'll send a form to you all to document what type of water right you have. And we will submit that to the Office of the State Engineer, who will confirm that water right. Something to keep in mind is that you have to have a commercial water right that is just part of the requirements that the OSC is requiring for water use. That's true of any sort of agricultural crop, from my understanding from the OSC. And so just making sure that you have the right type of water right in advance is really helpful in making sure that you have access to legal water. Ultimately, we need to make sure that the water that you're using is legally allowed for that purpose. The next deficiency that we see is related to diagrams. As I mentioned, there are kind of a lot of requirements we need to see on the diagram. We need to see doors and windows. We need to see where the security cameras are located. We need to see where the cannabis will be grown or stored or manufactured, or where all the activity is happening. So just make sure that you really read the requirements for premise diagrams in depth. And the last one is background check deficiencies. So as you submit forms for a background check, just make sure that everything is submitted and filled out correctly. So the very last slide that I have is just contact information. So to call the division, our main number is 505-476-4995. Once again, that's 505-476-4995. Our email address is RLD, as in Regulation and Licensing Department, .cannabiscontrol@state.nm.us. Again, that's rld.cannabiscontrol@state.nm.us. And my name is Robert Sachs, and my email is robert.sachs, spelled SACHS, @state.nm.us. And as I said, our website is ccd.rld.state.nm.us, and all of our information is actually on that website, including our phone number and email address. So if you can't remember the URL, just type Cannabis Control Division, New Mexico into Google and you will find us. So thank you all for your time, and I look forward to answering any questions you all may have.
Thank you, Mr. Robert Sachs. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to present us with that helpful information. Next up, we have from the New Mexico Office of the State Engineer and Water Resource, Mr. John Romero.
Good morning, everybody. I'm not sure if you can see me or if you can see the presentation that we sent in, the slides. I can wait a few minutes. While it's coming up, I'll just give a little information on the agency. So my name is John Romero. I'm with the Office of the State Engineer. I'm the Water Resource Allocation Program Director and the Water Rights Director. And for those of you that don't know what the Office of the State Engineer does, we administer and regulate all groundwater and surface water in the state of New Mexico. So you have to have a permit from our office to use water in any way. I want to thank the City of Las Cruces for allowing us to present today. We're getting lots and lots of questions on cannabis use and water for cannabis use. So I think, can everybody see that? I can see it. So let's go on to the next slide, please. So water use in New Mexico. All water use in New Mexico, like I said before, requires a valid water right. Water rights may be acquired, purchased, conveyed, and transferred, and they need a permit. The presence of water does not necessarily indicate that you have a water right. So a lot of people think there's a stream, river, an acequia or ditch running in the backyard, or they might have located a well on the property. Doesn't mean you have a water right. So you need to check into that with our district office. At the end of this presentation, I'll have the contact information for all of our 7 district offices statewide. We do have an office there in Las Cruces that you can contact as well. So you have to check to see if your water rights are valid, if that well has a water right, because maybe the water rights were moved off that well. So don't assume you have a water right. Next slide, please. Commercial cannabis growth. So now with the new law, you have to have a water right for commercial cannabis growth. Cannabis producers must acquire valid irrigation water rights for outdoor cultivation or commercial water rights for indoor cultivation. When we say indoor, it could be a building indoor with lights, or a lot of places are using greenhouses and hoop houses. Those are all considered indoor use. So you will have to have your water right configured for commercial use. You must acquire water rights if you don't have them to be able to get the certification or the validity okay from our office. Transfers require a permit from the Office of the State Engineer. Any transfers of water rights go through our office, and I'll talk more about this later. All permit approvals require meter installation and reporting. And these meters, you have to put a meter on a well or meter your surface use, and that'll be required to report to us either monthly or quarterly. Next slide, please. Next slide. So the next slide is on domestic wells, and I'm not sure, maybe it's slow on my end, but the main thing with this next slide is a lot of questions have come into our office about domestic wells. You may not use a domestic well to grow commercial cannabis or any crop. Any domestic well cannot be used for pecans, anything. Some areas disallow outdoor watering by law from domestic wells, and that's in Santa Fe area, the Nambe, Powaka, Tesuque area. That's by court order. The Gila, San Francisco, and the Reserve New Mexico area in the southwest part of New Mexico can use domestic wells for outdoor use. But the one thing you can do, if you do have a domestic well on your property, you may transfer valid water rights into that domestic well with a permit from our office, and then you could use the domestic well, and you will be required to meter that domestic well. So I'm not seeing it, but it could be my connection's slow. Next slide. It should be the surface water slide. And I'm not sure if it's on there. I'm still on the commercial cannabis growth slide. But again, it could be my connection. So next one, there we go. Thank you. Surface water. So surface water are ditches, rivers, streams, springs, or other water sources that have water rights associated to them. You must have a right by permit from the OSC to divert surface water. Surface water may be transferred by making an application for permit to the OSC. Next slide, please. You may buy and sell water rights just like anything else, and you'll have to transfer those by recorded warranty deed. Those rights, those surface and groundwater rights, are specific to that place of use. That's a term that we use a lot, and a point of diversion. And they require permit to change those water rights, both surface and ground. So place of use is where you irrigate, where you use that water. Point of diversion could be the well, or it could be where you take the water from the surface source, the stream or river. Be sure and research the water rights prior to making a purchase. A lot of people will buy water rights that maybe are already sold to somebody else. So it's buyer beware. Be very careful. Check with our office to see if these water rights are, one, they're valid, and two, they still exist on the land that you're purchasing them from. And not all claims to water are valid. Be very careful with this. Next slide, please. So if you're going to transfer water rights, to get them to the place that you're going to be using them or to configure them to commercial use, you'll have to transfer them with a permit from our office. Right now, as we speak, we have a backlog of water right applications of approximately 500. And these have nothing to do with cannabis. These are just farmers, ranchers, municipalities, other uses such as maybe Intel that are backlogged in our office all over the state in our 7 district offices. And when we receive these applications, we receive them in the order they come in. So we put them into a queue. So the average processing time for these applications is, depending on the complexity, it could be 8, 10 months, maybe more. And if your application gets protested, that'll go possibly 2 years. So my point here is, don't wait to move your water rights, get them configured in the proper way. It does take time. It's not a go into our office, come out with a permit, not even a domestic well permit. That doesn't happen all the time with a domestic well permit, which is a pretty simple, straightforward process. And the reason why it takes so long is because you have to advertise these in the paper. And that's just the advertising alone is a 70-day period in the local newspaper. So get to this right away if you're going to be doing any transfers. Next slide, please. So a lot of individuals, and Robbie with regulation and licensing mentioned it before, you can get your water rights from municipal water suppliers or a commercial water supplier. You can purchase water from them. If you have your own connection, a hookup, you're within the city limits, and they usually have their water rights configured properly for commercial, for irrigation, domestic use. For instance, here in the Albuquerque area, the Albuquerque Water Authority, you can get your water from them. If you're within the city limits, City of Santa Fe, any municipality, you can get your water from them and just supply a letter to RLD. They'll send it to us and we'll verify that, yeah, they have water rights. But one thing I want to be stressed to everybody, be very careful with Mutual Domestic Water Consumers Associations, MDWCAs. Those small, very small mom and pop type things, entities, their water rights are for domestic use only. Mutual, it's in their title, Mutual Domestic Water. So be very careful. A lot of them, their water rights aren't configured for commercial use. They are probably at the upper limit of their water right, which means they're using all their water rights already and they can't take on new customers, especially a new demand to their system for cannabis growth. So be very careful. We prefer that cannabis growth isn't done with MDWCAs and their water. Next slide, please. So this slide is, it gives all the 7 district offices and their addresses. So depending on where you're at, you'd contact one of these district offices to check on water rights or to file any applications to change your water rights, to move them to a domestic well or add the commercial use to them. The 2 main points I want to stress here are domestic wells. You cannot use a domestic well unless you transfer valid water rights into the domestic well. And don't wait to get your permit processed, get it filed with our office so we can get going on it. Remember that 70-day period just to advertise it in the local newspaper so people can be aware of it, so they can possibly protest. Those are the two main things I want to stress here. Also, next slide, please. We also, this is our website, and on our website, you can go to our website, and we have on our hot topics, frequently asked questions, sheet of questions that you can read, and it's basically a lot of the questions that we've received throughout the last few months, and we've received a lot of them. It's very important you can look at these questions. They may address some of the questions you have out there. If not, you can call our office, that previous slide, or just you can go to our website and get the phone numbers to our district offices. And I'll be here for more questions if you have later. That's pretty much it. And main thing, no domestic wells. We're finding a lot of people thinking they can use domestic wells, and that's not for commercial cannabis use. So thank you, and I'll be here for questions later.
Thank you, Mr. John Romero. Appreciate your time. Next up, we have New Mexico Department of Agriculture, Brad Lewis, the Director of Agricultural and Environmental Services Division. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I don't know, there I am up on the background of it. Thank you all first for the inclusion of New Mexico Department of Agriculture in this. I was presented with the title for hemp. I went ahead and included some cannabis responsibilities that the Department of Agriculture have with it. And so if I can have the first slide brought up, I'd appreciate that. Well, in the interest of time, I'll go ahead and proceed without the slides then. So the regulatory roles, next slide, please. Thank you. So with most agencies, we do have some regulatory goals, and that is to create an even playing field for the industries we provide. We provide for consumer and industry protection. I think some people forget what state agencies are here for, and that's our primary reason is for protection. We also ensure that our services are efficient and fair, and we operate under a USDA requirement with respect to hemp. And the first part of my presentation will be directed at hemp. Next slide, please. So our regulatory role with hemp is primarily pre-harvest, and it involves the issuing of a hemp license, and we have several. We have an annual license for outdoor production, continuous for indoor production, and a hemp breeder's license. The hemp breeder's license is somewhat unique in that it allows for those that are breeding for hemp to possess plant stock up to 5% THC. So it's somewhat of a crossover with the cannabis group on that end of it, with the difference being the intent of the final product for it. Hemp harvest inspection services, we provide for those things in the field, and testing is conducted by the approved state laboratories, which will be the same laboratories approved for cannabis on that. If everything passes, you're issued a certification, meaning that you've met the qualifications for hemp at the time of testing. One of the things that is changing this year is that if your crop does test hot, that means over 0.3% THC, there are some remediation options that are available to the grower. So please call us for those options at some point in time on there. Next slide, please. I think one of the interesting things with hemp is the statistics over the last 3 years. So annual licenses in 2019. So this is the outdoor. is we went from 252 in 2019 to 60 in 2021. Our acres went from 6,000 to 469 acres outside. And so this happened nationwide on this. Our continuous licenses also dropped. So these are the indoor from 100 to 48 license, so about half in a 2-year period. We'll look at the square feet for hemp. And so we've gone from 7 million to 10 million square feet that are registered with the Department of Agriculture for hemp production. I suspect a lot of this square feet will eventually be converted or is in the process of being converted over to cannabis on that. And so that may be the reason for that. Next slide, please. If you're looking for, the next slide is a picture of where our hemp licenses are in the state. And you can see that most of them are centered around the Santa Fe, Albuquerque area in the northern New Mexico, and some outlying areas to the east and to the west. And then Doña Ana County is also. And I suspect these are also where a lot of the licenses for the cannabis will also be taking place in the state. Next slide, please. So in changes with hemp, and starting in January 1st of this year, all states have to be operating under approved regulatory plan approved by USDA, or they turn over their services to USDA. When we met with the hemp industry earlier last year, they decided that they wanted to operate under a state program. So the state kept the regulatory program for hemp. As a reminder, CBD is not approved as a food additive by FDA. Hemp products are not approved as feedstock. And there is an increased interest in industrial uses for hemp in the state. So we expect some acreage to increase in the next several years. Next slide, please. So for hemp and cannabis, our statutory duties, and I'll stick mostly with cannabis here, is by law, if you're selling or retailing hemp, your scales have to be inspected. Seed sales for planting, there are some requirements for that. Nurseries, if you're a nursery, you have to be licensed by Department of Agriculture. And then we have some pesticides. Next slide, please. I'll go into a little bit more detail on those. So weigh scales in the cannabis industry. If you go into any place that's selling hemp or cannabis and you're buying whole bud or anything else by weight, those scales are required by law to be inspected by the Department of Agriculture. Again, that's supposed to protect the business and protect the consumer, considering that most of this material is being sold at about $9 per gram. It's probably pretty important to have those things inspected regularly. Next slide, please. Seed sales for planting. So cannabis, state laws do not make a distinction in seed between cannabis, hemp, or any other seed in the state regarding labeling. And so to be under the law, you know, your labeling has to have the kind of variety, the germination rate, percent inert matter, your treatment, if you treated it with a pesticide, and the test date when it was tested. And then, of course, a lot number that can be gone back to it. And so this is going to be a little bit difficult for most people to do. And all of these things can be done by those that are selling seeds. So if you're a seed producer of cannabis, you can sit down and do your own germination, inert matter, all of these other things and label it. They do not have to be required to be done by a state seed certified person in there. The only thing that the state requires it is that it be accurate and that understand that there's a 9-month expiration date on all these things. Next slide, please. If you are growing cannabis plants for retail sale or wholesale sale on it, you need a plant nursery license. Again, the state law does not say that cannabis is exempt from this. So we just look at it as another plant nursery, similar to any other in the state that's growing and selling nursery stock. So there is a nursery license requirement for that. Next slide, please. I think the last well, let me move on. I think the last thing I wanted to cover in this thing, and probably most important, is pesticide registration. Regulation, licensing, and Robbie and his group recognize the importance of providing a safe product to the public. And part of that is the use of pesticides in those. And because cannabis, both cannabis and hemp, are used for inhalation purposes, the regulation of those pesticides is extremely important. One of the things that the state has an issue with is that EPA does not regulate pesticides for cannabis. So all of this is left up to the states to determine which pesticides can be used in cannabis and which cannot be used in cannabis. And that falls under the role of New Mexico Department of Agriculture. And so with respect to pesticide registrations, the department looks at pesticides with respect to its use. So that'd be inhalation, topical ingestion, or suppositories also for cannabis use. And we typically allow for those pesticides when they meet certain criteria with regard to safety and environmental purposes. The department does, the Mexico Department of Agriculture does keep a list of those that we have registered for cannabis on our website on there. And with that, I will conclude my remarks and be around to address any questions. Thank you very much again.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brad Lewis. Appreciate your time. Last but not least, in this first segment, we will have Mr. Max Gruner from New Mexico Economic Development Department, and acts as a tribal liaison, community, business, and rural development representative. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Max here with the New Mexico Economic Development Department. I am also just put my contact information into the chat box. You will also find the contact information for myself and my colleagues in the slide deck that I believe will be shared with everybody who is in attendance today. And Irina, if we could go to my slide deck, I'd appreciate it. I'm going to do two things today. I'm going to give you a general overview of the New Mexico Economic Development Department and as it relates to adult use recreational cannabis in New Mexico. And then I'm going to dig into 3 programs that we believe might be of interest to the attendees at today's presentation. Let me first say on a general basis, New Mexico EDD, we are not part of the regulatory framework or ecosystem. We partner with everybody else who will be presenting today, but we really do not have, as I like to say, a chicken in the fight when it comes to regulations. The mechanism by which we can support the now legal recreational use, adult use cannabis industry, it's brand new to us. So similar to other new or disruptive industries, whether it be Lyft and Uber or Airbnb, we are learning every day how to adapt the programs that we have on the books to make them most useful to you all who are trying to grow this industry. And the truth of the matter is that the programs we have, when those programs were put on the books, when the legislative intent behind these programs, it just didn't anticipate or envision the current situation of having adult use cannabis be legal. So, at times we're trying to fit a round peg into a square hole, and as I said, every day we're trying to get a little better at doing so. And we really appreciate all of your patience and collaborations in helping us get better at applying our funding programs to your industry. If you could please go to the next slide. There are, so our main offices on Santa Fe, we have a satellite office or sister office in Albuquerque, and then we have 6 regional offices. You see my colleagues listed here. My guess would be, given the location of the hosts of today's presentation, most of you should take note of Luis Marquez information and also of Susie Russell's information. But again, you can always contact me. I'd be happy to connect you with the right people. It's really based on geography of where you find yourself. Don't have to take a photo or notes of the slide. This will be provided to you. Next slide, please. So we have 3 programs I'm going to be talking to you about, and I just want to start the conversation by just saying, I work for government. I love my acronyms, so I apologize, and I will try very hard to not overwhelm you with abbreviations and acronyms. The first program is called, or is generally known as our Jtech program, JTIP, the Job Training Incentive Program. I've been doing this kind of work all over the country for a while, and in my opinion, New Mexico's Jtech program is probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest, job training incentive program anywhere in the country. And essentially, the way it works is upon having your proposal, your project approved by what's called the Jtech board, the state of New Mexico can reimburse a job creator for anywhere between 50 and 80% of the salaries for net new employees, eligible employees that you hire as part of your business expansion or relocation. We have a dedicated Jtech team at the state. So again, if you remember that previous slide of all my colleagues, if you feel like, or if you want to educate yourself more on Jtech, reach out to any of us and we'd be happy to talk to you in some detail. On a high level, only jobs that are tied to manufacturing will be Jtech. And then again, depending on the complexity of that job, you may be approved anywhere between 2 and 6 months for reimbursement of anywhere between 50 and 85% of the salaries of those brand new employees during the training and onboarding of those new hires. You can imagine, if you do the math on the back of a cocktail napkin, I mean, there's some real money on the table through this program. The timing is important for Jtech. So talk to us before you hire. Essentially, you're looking at about a 45-day cycle. You need to get the Jtech application to our Jtech team 30 days prior to the Jtech board meeting. And the Jtech board meets every second or third Friday of the month. And it depends a little bit on how the holidays fall. So in the past, we've had a little bit of shifting, but every second or third Friday of the month, the Jtech board meets. If you want to be heard, if you want your project, your expansion to be heard at the Jtech board, you need to get your application to my colleague Avelina 30 days prior to that board meeting. You should probably give yourself 2 weeks to work with Avelina to fill out your application. It's a wonderful program. You can Google it. You can find it on our website and educate yourself on it. But again, reach out to me, to any of my colleagues, and we'd be happy to take you by the hand and talk more about it. Next slide, please. The Collateral Assistance Program, CAP, C-A-P. This is a wonderful program, and I think it's somewhat underutilized in the state. So we're really trying to promote it. And I want to give a huge shout out to the New Mexico Angels, who have really helped us get the word out about the CAP program. What's interesting about the CAP program is that no money exchanges hands. So I'm going to say something that's, I think, really exciting, then I'm going to backpedal a little bit, and then hopefully I'll be able to end this slide on a high level again. So essentially the way this program works, generally speaking, if you needed a traditional loan through a financial institution, you know, you walk into your Wells Fargo, you walk into your Eagle Credit Union, what have you, and you say, look, I'm a business owner, I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z, I need a loan, I need $100,000, I need $200,000 for a new roof or what have you. If the financial institution approves your loan, we can come in and help you secure, collateralize your loan up to 50% of the principal, and our dollar ceiling is $250,000. So to be specific, in the example I gave, you walk into a bank, you need $100,000, you know, the bank, the loan officer looks at you and says, you know, we'd love to work with you. How are you going to secure this? And you're like, you know, already have a lien on my building. How am I going to do this? You can contact us and we can come in sideways and we will be able to secure, in the example I just gave, $50,000 of that $100,000 loan, which, you know, for many businesses is really wonderful because it alleviates some of those shackles that we all carry when we take on a loan and have to carry the security. Now, here's where I have to backpedal a little bit. Because of your industry and the adult recreational cannabis industry not being recognized federally as being legal, you are not able to get any loans at this point with any financial institution that is regulated by the federal government. So essentially, all banks and credit unions are not going to be available to you for loans. We do have some community, CDFCs, community development financial organizations in the state. It is hypothetically thinkable that one of those might get to the point of executing loans for people working in this space, but I am not aware that that has happened, and it's a big decision for a organization like that to do, because, you know, you are endangering any other kind of federal funding that you may be getting and you might depend upon it. So that was the downer of this presentation. And now I wanted to maybe end on a high note with regards to CAP, the Collateral Assistance Program. As many of you have probably seen the press release, RLD, in collaboration with NMFA, so the New Mexico Finance, NMFA, New Mexico Finance Association. I might be butchering the name, the NMFA. Starting probably in March, will have loans available that are not federally regulated to people working in this space. We believe, and we are, you know, getting to the point of certainty, that if any of you are going to be pursuing those loans through the NMFA, that we will be able to scaffold on top of that loan our CAP program to help you collateralize and secure those loans. Again, those loans do not exist yet. This is something for the future, for the next handful of months. But you know, if you get to that point, please reach out to us, because we're eagerly working on a mechanism to apply this program to the NMFA loans that will hopefully be made available to people working in the space. The Collateral Assistance Program, if you could go to the next slide, please, is really, really flexible. We do not micromanage what you use your loan for. So you can see here, essentially anything you might need that money for, you know, we will be agreeable for. And what's fun about the Collateral Assistance Program, it's not really a heavy lift for us, right? The bank, the financial institution, the NMFA will do all the vetting of your loan request. And essentially we come in at the 11th hour and say, hey, financial institution, if you are willing to execute this loan, then we are willing to support the collateralization up to, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, up to 50% of the principal with a dollar ceiling of $250,000. And next slide, please. This is the last program I'm going to be talking about, LEADA. It's probably the program we're most known for at the state, the Local Economic Development Act. We call this program a grant. It's a little bit of a misnomer for two reasons. It is a grant because it's not a loan. You don't have to pay the money back. However, it is a reimbursement for what we call LEADA eligible expenses that you have incurred. Those expenses have to be tied to the acquisition of land, the acquisition or construction of buildings, to infrastructure or tenant improvements, and can include things like mortgages, rent, and lease abatements. The one thing I want to say here is, and this is really important, and if you could go to the next slide, please. Equipment is statutorily excluded, so we cannot reimburse you for costs incurred by you for the purchase of equipment. So it's a reimbursement program. The second thing you need to know about this program is your grant is contingent upon certain kind of performance measures that you agree to contractually. And those performance measures are tied to job creation. So you'll say something like, Max, I'm going to create 2 new jobs in year 1, another 3 jobs in year number 3, et cetera, et cetera. You will get the reimbursements pretty early in our contractual relationship with each other. However, statutorily, we, the state, need to have a robust mechanism to what's called clawing back. We need to be able to claw back a certain percentage of the grant if you fall short at any time in our contract and are not able to either attain or maintain those performance measures. So you agree to 10 new hires by year number 5. You only hire 2 people. We need a mechanism to say, look, you're 80% short of the goal that you committed to. We need some of our grant money back. For that reason, any LEADA grant amount needs to be secured, collateralized for the duration of our contractual relationship with each other. So that's really, really important. So, if at any point, you successfully navigate the LEADA application process and we come to the table with a $100,000 LEADA grant, for example, you would have to be able to secure those $100,000 for the 5 or 10 years that you will be in contractual relationship with us. Now, specifically for your industry, that can be a hurdle, because the kind of security that we are looking for is it needs to be a robust security. So we love letters of credit. Because of the strained relationship with the banking industry that you are all experiencing, my guess is that you will not be able to get a LOC, a letter of credit, through a financial institution. The other thing we accept as collateral is a surety bond, which goes to an insurance company. I haven't heard of anybody doing this, but my guess is that that's going to be less than easy also. And we can just not accept, typically speaking, equipment as a security, because the more specialized the equipment it is, the more valuable it is to you, but the less valuable it is to us, because we get cents on the dollar if it ever had to go to auction. The last thing I want to say about LEADA, and this is part of our learning experience as we're trying to apply our programs to this new industry. This is the last bullet on the slide, and my boss asked me to really highlight it. You need to have full licensure through RLD before your LEADA application can be considered through our department. So let that sink in a little bit. And I think the takeaway for that last bullet is, LEADA is really, if it becomes an option, it will only be an option very late in the process of your organizational development, if you will. Irene, I think that is my last slide. Could you just double check? Oh, here, or what I had said earlier. Again, land, building, and infrastructure are eligible LEADA funds. In closing, I will say the following. We are not part of the regulatory infrastructure ecosystem. We are really here to help. We have yet to successfully support the cannabis project, legal adult use project in the state. We are here and ready to talk to any of you who think that any of these programs might be useful and commensurate with your needs. And, we really appreciate the collaboration with the other members on this panel, but also with you, the public and entrepreneurs, because as I said, we are learning, as we go and start applying these programs to your projects and to your ambitions. I will stand for questions at the end of this part of the presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Max Gruner. Appreciate your time sharing all that valuable information about incentives with us. So that is the first segment of our cannabis seminar. We are running about 20 minutes late, so I apologize. There is the second half of this seminar. They are waiting online patiently for us, and we appreciate your time. We are now going into Q&A. Before we go into Q&A, I know people will start dropping off. I want to show everybody just real quick that all the PowerPoint slides that are being submitted here that you have seen already, you can find it on our cannabis website on City of Las Cruces. If you just Google Cannabis City of Las Cruces, it'll be here by the end of the business day today. Go to Cannabis Information, Las Cruces, and if you scroll down, you'll see the agenda, and it will be here. So I just wanted to make everybody known of this information. By end of business today, in the order, hopefully, of the speakers, you'll have this information. So just wanted to share that. Additionally, tomorrow, if anyone leaves early, we will have the same type of panel, but it will be on local legislation. So we'll have city staff from economic development, from community development, talking about zoning, dispensary locations, potential agricultural locations, and policies and buffers. That will be tomorrow. Our county will also be speaking. And so all those interested in the local area for the county and for this area, that'll be for tomorrow. So with no further ado, let's go to Q&A. For questions and answers, we, for time constraints, only have 10 minutes. And so there's 10-minute behind, but I know this is the most important part of everything, so it can start making sense. So just be mindful. We'll try to stretch that as much as possible, but we are behind 20 minutes. With no further ado, why don't we start with Q&A and see if we wanted to start with some online questions first, and then we'll go from there. Thank you, Francis.
Thank you, Kenny. And this is for some of the members here in the audience that perhaps have similar questions. One of the questions online is whether the carrier must have a retail shop, or this can have internet orders as well included in this. And I don't know if perhaps Mr. Robert Sachs might have some insight into that.
Yes, absolutely. So retailers, standalone retailers, and also those who have retail functions as part of a vertically integrated license actually have Courier functionality built into that license. So you don't need to have an additional Courier license if you are a retailer. If you only want to do Courier activities, so you don't have your own retail shop, but you would essentially be the Uber Eats or the Grubhub or whatever, that is where the Courier license kicks in. So yes, you can have a standalone Courier license. It does not have to be tied to retail.
Thank you, Robert. Another question that comes here is whether importing from other states in which it's legal will be allowed.
No, it will not. It's actually federally illegal to move cannabis products across state lines. As you all know, there's kind of a state-federal conflict related to laws, and interstate highways and any sort of interstate commerce is governed by federal law. So it's federally illegal to move cannabis across state lines. So it will have to be grown in New Mexico, manufactured in New Mexico, sold in New Mexico. And cannot be moved. And that goes for consumers as well. They cannot purchase cannabis and move it across state lines.
Thank you, Robert. And the last question that is asked here, there's others that perhaps we can answer in the financing side, but in the next section. But there's a question about retail establishments. What are some of the requirements in terms of security, right? Like cameras, vaults, security doors, and are all of those addressed for either production, for the retail side, or for the agricultural side?
So our as it relates to security, pretty much wherever there will be cannabis stored, grown, moved, and anywhere cannabis will be on site, there need to be security cameras and alarm systems. The exact requirements related to what security systems need to be in place are in our rules. So you'll want to take a look at those as you're moving through and determining actually the layout of your businesses. It's vitally important that you both have security cameras in place and alarm systems, and even the specifications of, you know, the quality of camera that you all need to have, that is in our regulations as well. So I would encourage everyone to take a look at our rules. That's where the rubber hits the road, and that's when we're looking at applications, that's what we're looking at. Those, you know, the black letter of the regulations is what our licensing team is following. So, you know, if you don't have someone on your team that is comfortable reading through those regulations, I would encourage you all to try and find someone, because it's vitally important for the success of you getting a license, but then also your continuing operations, that you understand what security requirements you need, operational requirements, etc.
Thank you, Robert. And now we're gonna take some questions from the audience. And we have a couple of microphones on both sides. Donald and Cruz are going to be helping us ask some of the questions. And I'll repeat those questions just in case you don't hear them for the panelists over here and the folks in.
And Francisco, I actually received one early on, so I wanted to actually go with this one first. This one is for Robert as well. The producer licenses opened September 1st, but there has been a delay in the approvals of licenses. Could you explain what that delay has been?
Yes, so we had first a delay in receiving what's called an ORI number from the FBI that was necessary for us to conduct background checks. And ultimately, it took a lot longer than expected for us to get that number. We actually did not ultimately get that number. So then we had to promulgate emergency rules to get around those requirements. Also, like I mentioned, we did have a lot of application deficiencies. So we have moved through quite a few applications, letting people who have submitted applications know that there are some deficiencies, whether that's related to water, the premise diagram. Unfortunately, I don't know that we've had any application that's come in 100% perfect. So there is a little bit of back and forth happening between the division and applicants themselves, which is, again, is why it's vitally important that you know, someone on your team is reading the rules and making sure that the documentation that's submitted falls in line with our requirements. You know, the back and forth slows things down, and it ultimately leads to delays in us being able to get licenses out the door. So we are happy to be reporting that, you know, now that we've had some back and forth, we're moving through some applications and approving them on a daily basis. And for anyone that's curious, we actually have an ability to search licenses that have been approved on our licensing portal. If you go to apply for a license, there's a screen that says register for an account, and at the very top hand side of the screen, it says search for a license. So you can see how many have been approved so far.
Thanks, Robert. We have a question from the audience.
Hello, my name is Victor Corral. I'm a combat veteran. And my question is there any programs for veterans that want to enter the cannabis industry already developed, or are they going to be developed?
The question is with regards to whether there's any veteran programs for individuals that want to join the cannabis industry. I don't know if that's a question maybe for
At least from the RLD's perspective, there aren't specific programs. We've been working with what's called the Cannabis Regulatory Advisory Committee to come up with a definition for social equity, which includes veteran status, though there's no specific program that comes along with that. But as we are looking at licenses, and particularly for a new loan program that the New Mexico Finance Authority has put together, whether or not someone meets the definition of a social equity applicant will be extremely important. And just while I'm on the topic of that, and I'm apologies for not touching on this earlier, the New Mexico Finance Authority has been approved to essentially issue loans to micro producer businesses. There's a application that's being developed by them. And so that unfortunately isn't anything that CCD has any sort of input in beyond defining what a social equity applicant is. So if you are curious on that program, I would look on the New Mexico Finance Authority's website.
Next question. Anyone else from the audience? We have a question over here.
Over here.
My apologies.
So in regards to the BioTrack on the producer end, at first the regulation stated that it had to go from seed to sale. Are we able to purchase clones, source genetics from another licensed producer for the BioTrack purposes, or do we have to start all of our processes from seed?
The question is with regards to whether they can start the bio process from seed or whether they can purchase clones, right? Correct.
Clones can be purchased, at least for BioTrack purposes. We care about the plants being tagged when they are mature, which we've defined as female and flowering. So at that point is when they need to be tagged. Seed to sale is a little bit of a misnomer. That's just kind of the industry jargon for the tracking software, but the seeds and immature plants do not need to be tracked.
Thank you, Robert. We have an additional question over here.
About how the rules and regulations, cameras, everything I know is in the web. I can find it the website. I just cannot find the details, which camera, which alarms do you run when the requirements are. I cannot find the details for the license.
The question is in general about the details on the cameras and the details on the alarm systems. Is there any specific details, a specific camera that needs to be purchased or a specific alarm system that needs to be purchased?
In terms of the brand or a particular type of system, no, there are resolution requirements for security cameras at least. And again, those are in our rules and regulations, which can be found on our website, but also under the New Mexico Administrative Code, NMAC. So resolution requirements for cameras and then notification requirements for alarm systems. They need to alert, and it says in the rules who needs to be alerted at what time. So I would just direct you all to the security requirements in the rules for that.
Thank you, Robert. And that will be the last question of this first set of questions for the Q&A session. We'll have a second session of the Q&A session just in a couple of hours, so in about an hour. And there's also a reminder that tomorrow we'll be discussing the local, so the zoning, the building permits, and some of the security plans. Also, the PD department will be here to answer some of the additional questions that you may have from the local side. Thank you, Ikani.
Thank you, Francisco. Francisco is our Deputy Director of our Economic Development Department. And I know we're finished with our first segment, but before you leave, to all the state, can we give them a round of applause? I'm turning the camera now to the audience so that you guys can see everyone who came today. We have thousands and thousands of people here just to watch this live in person. So appreciate you all from the state making this possible, and thank you for being here. So if you want to stay on, you're more than welcome, but thank you so much for your time today, this morning. Now on to our second segment. This is the financial and business side of cannabis. And with no further ado, we will start with Mr. Drew Tulchin, who is from NM Angels and is the president of the company. All right, so is Mr. Drew Tulchin on? Just checking. Okay. All right, so we don't see him on in this time. If he does come on, we'll try to include him. But we'll go with the next up at this time. Okay, so next up, our second guest speaker, we will have. Oh, perfect. Okay. Sorry for the mix-up. Looks like we had him in the wrong section. We're adding him as a panelist. He was in the attendee section. So we'll set this up.
Hello, sound check. Hey folks, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thanks to everyone, and thanks for the attendees, particularly for joining. Appreciate the city of Las Cruces as well as the many panelists have gone before. A lot of folks are doing great work to make cannabis and similar economies available in our state to help our economy, and I'm really thankful. My name is Drew Tulchin. I'm the new president of the New Mexico Angels, and if you go to next, please. Do you want me to do my slides, or are you guys okay advancing them?
If you want to go ahead and do yours, that would be great.
Okay, so share screen. Let's see if I can do this smoothly here. Everyone hang on. Share. How's that looking?
We can see it.
All right, full screen, one moment, please. Who's got a good joke while we have to, do the tech things in between? Let's see here. Okay, I'll advance it this way because that way, oh, you can see them. Is that going to be okay on the screen? Does that look okay in the audience?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the mission of New Mexico Angels is our goal is to provide opportunities for our members, we're a membership-based organization, to seek financial returns and earn money by investing in early stage companies in New Mexico and the Southwest region. And so we're very dedicated to being able to invest in high growth startup companies that are based in New Mexico, that have New Mexican entrepreneurs and or have products that are going to help our state. And we've been operating for 21 years. We've invested more than $24 million in New Mexico startups, which helps our local economy and jobs. We have a partnership to the north in Colorado with Rockies Venture Club. That gives us access to deals, so being able to share New Mexico companies with a larger community, as well as getting trainings. And then we have a number of programmings for 2022, including angel education, so that people who are new to investing in companies like yours can learn a little bit and be able to build good relationships between you and your investors. Some typical programming that we have with more details available on our website, nmangels.com/events. We have a new angel club. That's the place that angels new and experienced, so people who want to be investing can learn. That's going to be a weekly program starting next week. Monthly, we have a program called Office Hours. This is a place for entrepreneurs to get questions answered. We have mentors there. We have relationships and connections. Entrepreneurs present monthly And again, we'll go into the selection criteria of of how a company can present to our community. And then we have monthly social events for investors who are members. And then we have quarterly events that are open to a greater audience. The Angel Club I mentioned is a 1-hour training weekly. It's virtual for now. We'll do in person in Albuquerque and Santa Fe, given the wonders of COVID. And this is an area where experienced and new investors or people who would like to learn about investing can learn the ropes, because it can be difficult to gain information about something that sometimes seems a little exclusive. We're a membership-based organization, but we don't do it by ourselves. This is a community and an ecosystem building, which is why we're here today, why we salute all the people who are doing the private sector work, and why we're appreciative of our public sector colleagues who are doing a lot of work to try to help our economy. So there are a lot of sponsors and partners that work with us to be able to do the things that we do. And that's involved in investing, where we have companies come to us seeking the opportunity to get in front of investors. And we do what's called due diligence, which is we will look into companies. And we have a preliminary approach called an assessment, where every company that joins us is reviewed by an MBA analyst or a mentor, so a member of the New Mexico Angels who has experience in business. And we provide written feedback to people as a first step. If it's a business that has high growth potential, that feels aligned with the potential for Angels to do an investment, we would go deeper and do a deeper dive and learn more about the company, its plan, its financial projections, its intellectual property or IP, and how else it's planning to make a difference as it moves ahead. And Angels come together in what's called an SPV, or a special purpose vehicle, which is a collective effort to invest jointly as a single entity into a company. So examples of what we've done in this last calendar year, we worked with 11 companies. They're up here. You'll see we do have a hemp company, First Crop, so not in the cannabis space because we're still waiting for recreational, but we do have a little bit of familiarity with the agricultural side of this business, and certainly have support for high growth opportunities. And so these are the type of companies that we've worked with. You'll see that some of them are CPGs, consumer product companies, some are software, some are hardware, et cetera. So what is this thing, an angel, that I'm talking about? So it's a legal term, accredited investor, which is a US federal term defined by the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission. It actually dates back to the Wall Street crashes of the 20s and 30s, where the federal government had to step in because there were so many snake oil salesmen of companies selling things and high flying that there were a set of rules established for private companies for investment. A public company like Apple or Amazon, those are public companies, and so stocks are available and traded on the secondary market, and you can buy and sell those easily. In a private company, it's a little more difficult. And so when we talk about an angel who is an accredited investor, we're looking at them operating jointly or solo. So someone could just write a check into your company, but they are seeking returns. This is not a gift. This is not a grant. This is a private investor seeking to invest. And that the general strategy of angels is to put small amounts in a diverse portfolio, or to invest amongst a range of companies, either in their expertise if they have a knowledge base, or to diversify, what they call letting 1,000 flowers bloom, where they put different investments in different areas to diversify their risk. So that's the universe of angeldom that we're talking about when we talk about these things. So what is something that an angel investor might be looking for? And so again, this is not a grant, this is not a gift, this is an investment, and they want to be paid back. And so you need to be able to communicate how an investor is going to earn an ROI, or return on their investment. You can be early, you can be seed stage, you can be just at the formative stages and not have as much of a track record. But the more you can look like a company that is making money and is making money for investors, the better off you'll be, what's called de-risking. So more mature companies with more mature teams with better looking materials that have had more of their questions answered and are closer to the marketplace are more attractive because they're just further along. And then if it's an equity investment, then the question is, how much is the company worth, or what's the valuation? And an angel's going to want a better deal, so lower is better. And then for you to be able to enunciate or detail what you are raising, how much money you're raising, and what that money is going towards. And then a lot of times angels want to do more than just write a check. They want to be involved. They might have an expertise, if not a sectoral expertise in cannabis per se, they may have a business expertise like marketing or operations or sales or finance. And then they may have connections. Their Rolodex may be helpful to you in building your business. Some do's and don'ts. It's important to listen. One thing we find is entrepreneurs will approach us about things that on our website it's very clear we don't do. So an illegal company or company that's not yet incorporated or a company with a product that's being sold overseas. So look at what the specifications are of an investor and look at the rules and what they do and make sure you're a fit and try to answer their questions. Them understanding what you're doing is important, but it's also important for you to listen. And sometimes entrepreneurs are so busy selling or promoting themselves that they're using their mouth and they're not using their ears as much. What's our process? So if an entrepreneur is interested, they can look at our website, nmangels.com. And we use a platform that's used by angel investors nationwide. It's called GUST, G-U-S-T. It's a free platform. And there are details there where you can upload information about your company. And it's a bit of an administrative step. And the reason why we have people do that is one is it allows you to reach other angel groups. So you can use once and repeat many times. The second thing is it's a vetting mechanism. If you aren't able to answer their questions that you need to upload, for example, an investor presentation, financials, a website, if you've had any media attention, information about your team, if those are still questions, then that may mean that you have to do a little bit more homework or work before you can really be viable in engaging with us. After a company has submitted to us through GUST, we usually need a bit of time. We're very fortunate that we have a lot of companies. We've got a queue. So we reviewed more than 80 companies last calendar year, and we anticipate doing more than 100 this year. And we don't want to be negative to anyone, but we just want to know that this is not a high percentage opportunity. Last year, we worked with 11 companies, which was a high watermark. It was a large number for us. Usually we're looking at 4 to 6 companies each month. Maybe 2 of those, if they're good, will be invited to present for us to learn more. And even if you are invited to present, it doesn't mean that you're going to be invested in. So there's a long road in having an entrepreneur in a company receive a check from an investor. But we really encourage you to try it. We're very supportive. We think this is a great sector for the state and we want to see its growth. And so we're happy to be supportive where we can. We welcome people to check out our programs and join and be able to benefit from our many programs, both trainings and education for you as an entrepreneur, as well as investing education for those who may be looking at it. Here's my information. We'll put it in the chat. I'm available and this information will be available in our library. And then I'm here for the Q&A. And again, hats off to our organizers and also hats off to the many people who are working to make our state better economically. Thank you. Back over to you.
Thank you, Drew. Next up, we have our team from Southwest Capital Bank. We have Cullen Monaco, Shannon Cox, and Lonnie Talbert, who is the president and COO of Capital Bank. And Drew, if you're able to stop sharing, please. Thank you, sir. All right, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, great. I am not going to put up a PowerPoint. We did submit a couple of informational cards that will be in the information packet if you want to download it. Really, what I want to talk about today is the walls that you may experience that you have to get over in trying to find your banking account. As you know, New Mexico has made medical and adult use legal. They have opened this up as opportunity for all of New Mexico. However, the federal government still considers this to be highly illegal. Producing and selling marijuana is illegal at the federal level. Financial institutions are federally insured and federally regulated. That makes us walk a very thin line and makes it a very high risk prospect for us to bank a cannabis business. That being said, I truly believe that the federal regulators do not want a bunch of unsecured cash out there, unmonitored accounts. They do want to have some kind of oversight and safe banking. They cannot give us any guidance to go by. They can't tell us that it's okay, but they have given us a couple of documents for us to follow to bank cannabis in a safe manner. And we attempt to do that. Because it is a risky proposition for a bank, that means that there are a lot more requirements that we're going to expect of our customers, and it's probably a little more expensive than a standard commercial account. To get a bank account, you may think that you can go down to your bank that you've been with for years and years and just open an account. You may find some problems when you do that. I recommend that you have open, honest conversations with your bank. Tell them exactly what you're planning to do, exactly how you're going to organize your business, and what they can expect to see. Now, don't be surprised when your local bank tells you or your national bank tells you, you can't do that here. You're going to have to go somewhere else. And don't be surprised if after you've established your cannabis business, your bank all of a sudden tells you, yeah, you can't bank here anymore, even though you don't have your cannabis business with us. That's how scared a lot of these banks are. They just don't want to have the labor-intensive compliance burden that we have agreed to take on. When you go out to get your business started and you need to open an account, it's part of the requirements that you have a banking account to get a license. There are certain documentation expectations that your bank is going to have. So if you can go in prepared, it'll make it a lot easier. You're going to need to have your organizational documents complete and filed and accepted by the state. So that's your articles of incorporation, who has the power to do what within your organization, who owns it, how is the ownership structure set up. All of that needs to be completed and filed, and we need all of it. You will need to have your tax ID number established. We'll need to have proof that you have registered your tax ID number. Address issues. Now, a lot of you may not, at the time that you're applying for your license, you haven't secured your location yet, but we need to have a valid physical address for both the entity and all of the people associated with the accounts. You cannot give me a mailboxes, etc. address or a mail stop. That is not a physical address and we will not accept it. So if you haven't secured your location, you need to make sure that wherever you're doing business out of to get this organization started, whether it's your home or not, that's the address that you give us. We will need to have identification and information on all owners and signers. That includes everything: tax ID number, identification, physical addresses, date of birth, everything about those people. We want to know the information on your source of funding. Where is this startup money coming from? How are you going to open your account? Where are these funds coming from? What kind of activity can we expect to see coming in for the first months of your account and thereafter? You can have investors sending you funds via wire transfer or check. We need to know all of that. And you need to be very open and honest with us when we ask questions. We need to know who has control or authority over this account. Who is the bank going to be seeing on a regular basis? Who do we call when we have questions? Who are the beneficial owners? What is their ownership stake? How are they involved in it? What's your investment structure? How are you going to be paying back these investments? And we need to know the timeline and the estimates of the cash. While you haven't even started your business yet, we're going to be asking questions. Okay, what kind of transactions are we going to see? How much of each type of transaction are we going to see? And why, while at the beginning this may be just a best guess, that's fine, but be prepared to have thought about this and be able to answer those questions before you approach your banker. Once you get that banking relationship established, there's going to be some ongoing due diligence that we're going to require. And I will give you a description of that it's intrusive. So just be prepared to let your banker know everything about your business and everything that's going through that business. We're going to want your quarterly financials. We're going to want your tax returns. We're going to want your sales records. We're going to want copies of all of your licenses. If you have audits performed with your business, we want those too. We want to be notified immediately if there is any kind of a change. If you have changed an address, if you've opened a new dispensary, if some ownership structure has changed, we need to be notified immediately and have the documentation to back that up. We will be performing site visits on a regular basis. They may be scheduled or they may be surprise. You need to understand that they're going to happen, and your managers need to know that when we appear, you need to be able to let us walk through the establishment, open all the doors, do our checklist to make sure that everything is in compliance with state regulation and our requirements going forward. And we will do this ongoing. It won't be a one-time thing. It's going to be ongoing. We're going to make sure that everything is as it should be with that business. You need to think about things like, how are you going to pay your employees? Are your employees going to be able to cash their checks? So if you have a named business that obviously ties to the cannabis industry, and you give them a payroll check and they go to their bank and either deposit it or cash it, is their bank going to close their account? That happens every day on a regular basis. Beware that there are people out there selling what's called a cashless ATM. Visa does not like this. It's a way to get around the fact that you can't get merchant services as a cannabis business. They're thinking that these cashless ATMs are a great solution. Visa has sent out a warning to everybody, giving them a heads up that these are not okay according to Visa regulations if you are running cannabis transactions through these devices, and that they're going to start coming down on these processors. So you could lose that overnight. Your processor could disappear. So just be aware of that. We don't like privately owned ATMs in your establishment. If you think, well, okay, I'll just go buy my own ATM and put it in my dispensary. Well, if you have access to it and you're servicing it with your cash or for yourself, we're not going to allow you to have an account with us. We don't want you to be, that's just an easy way for illicit things to happen, and we're not going to accept that. And above all, transparency. Don't think that you can take shortcuts and lie to your bank, because most banks, almost all banks, have robust monitoring systems that are looking for certain patterns of activity, that are looking for certain cashless ATM processors, that are looking for certain ways that transactions are clearing through these accounts, and people are trying to hide them. There was a CPA, a couple of CPAs actually, that I have heard give advice to marijuana customers that don't worry about it. I can show you how to set up a different account, and we can, surreptitiously do these transactions. Nobody will ever know, and I can show you how to get around all of these regulations. Don't do that. Your bank's going to find out. They're going to kick you out because now you're money laundering and you're lying about it. Don't lie to your bank. Be very upfront and very transparent. The two financial institutions that are represented on this panel today have been in the industry. We have very strong, robust programs. We have experts on staff. We know what to look for. Our programs have been examined by federal regulators, and we have passed. That's what you want to look for when you're looking for your bank. Both Phil with US Eagle and us, we've put a lot of work into these programs, and we're very proud of them and the quality that we're putting out. A lot of other banks are getting into this, and that's great because competition's a good thing, but make sure that your bank has done their homework. They have their processes in place. They have their experts on staff. Because if you don't, and especially if they don't understand that you're a cannabis business, you could find yourself overnight without a bank account, and we certainly don't want that to happen. There are a lot more banks that are looking into this, and that's, like I said, it's a good thing. Just do your homework and make sure you have open, honest conversations with your banker. And like I said, we have some contact information on how to get a hold of us. We're not going to talk about products. We offer deposit products and all of the ancillary products that go along with those that most normal commercial customers can get. We do not offer merchant services to cannabis customers because it's not allowed. We are even dipping our toe into lending. However, at this point, it is very restrictive, and you have to be an established customer of several years before we would consider that. But that doesn't mean that that won't evolve into something a little more open in the future. So that's about all I have, and I look forward. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions. We won't talk about pricing or specifics. You can contact us. I have a young lady, Cullen Monaco. She is amazing to talk to. If you have any specific questions, you can reach out. All our contact information will be on the cards within the presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Shannon. Appreciate it. And definitely please hold on for Q&A. I'm sure there may be some questions. All right, so we have 3 remaining guest speakers. Next up will be Mr. Phil Forbert from the Airy Group, who is the Director of Cannabis Business Development.
Phil, will you be sharing your screen?
Hi, yes, give me a second and I'll attempt that process right now. And let me know if you can see the screen.
We can see it.
Get that out of the way. Honestly. Okay, I'm with Airy Group. My name's Phil Forbert, and I am the Director of Cannabis Business Development. Airy Group is part of US Eagle. US Eagle's been around serving New Mexicans for a little more than 85 years, 86, 87 years now. We're the only credit union. Now, Shannon did a great explanation of what the expectations are for financial institutions looking for cannabis-related businesses. And I'm not going to double up on that, but what I am going to do is kind of talk about some of the similarities between our programs. Shannon's group is a community bank. We're a credit union. Both of us, our principles are to serve our communities, to serve the underserved, and to ensure in these cases that New Mexicans get the financial services that they deserve. One of the things, or one of the main themes that Shannon also provided, was the compliance complexity that financial institutions at Airy Group and Southwest both have in setting up banking accounts for cannabis businesses. One of the things I'm going to brag about a little bit here is that US Eagle and Airy Group was recognized by New Mexico Attorney General Balderas in achieving a certification for cannabis banking protocols and practices. That was a program set up by the Attorneys General Association, and we were the first in the nation to receive that certification. That certification is important to us, and it should be important to you as business entrepreneurs, knowing that we're going to be following protocols, processes, compliance exercises that have been not only approved by our associated federal insurance, the NCUA, who insures credit unions, but also through separate entities, the attorneys general. Similar to Southwest, we will provide cannabis businesses with compliant banking services. It's going to allow you to safely deposit an account for your cash. You'll utilize business checking and debit cards, using online banking and mobile banking, and making ACH payments and deposits. These things will help increase your personal safety, both of your customers and your employees. So this is not a simple thing for you to consider. This is something that you can help your own business and industry ensure that this industry, especially in New Mexico, is conducted safely. Very similar to what Shannon talked about, we have a very robust onboarding and application process. Some of that onboarding and application process is intrusive. And if you've opened up business accounts before, you may question why so much is needed. Shannon did a great job of explaining it. I'm not going to repeat her words. She did a fantastic job of going through most of the complexities. I can tell you that our group, the agents that work for you, our representatives, have gone through Bank Secrecy Act protocols, training, money laundering training, et cetera, all to ensure that they have the expertise to not only serve you as the members and customers, but also to ensure that they're keeping US Eagle safe and that they're keeping the industry safe, and therefore New Mexico safe as well. Our process is stringent, similar to Shannon's. Again, I won't repeat that. All I will say is that once you realize the compliance and risk that our organizations undergo to serve you, usually you'll understand why we ask for the scrutiny that we do, the depth of information that we do, et cetera. One of these purposes, besides keeping us safe, besides keeping US Eagle's assets safe and protected from NCUA regulations that may hamper our ability to do business if we're doing the wrong thing, is that we have to do these ongoing monitoring. This is looking at public available sources for adverse information. This is going into your background, both of your principals involved in the business, but we will also go as far into as your vendors and suppliers, your employees, et cetera. That is the depth that we need to go into to ensure the safety of the account, the safety of the industry. Airy will provide for cannabis businesses, business checking, savings, debit, online and mobile, online bill pay, ACH, domestic wires, cash handling services. Cash handling services in this case is probably a little bit more interesting and important, especially for Las Cruces. As you know, if you've done your research, US Eagle and Airy does not have a physical presence in that area yet. But we do have resources that are available to help manage your cash flow, to help make your cash deposits in secured courier service pickups and deposit functions. That will allow us to secure that physical cash and basically allow you to focus on doing your business and not on banking issues. You can find out more about Airy, what we do, our overview, et cetera, at useagle.org/cannabis-banking. Again, this presentation, I believe, will be made available for download, so you can find this website. Well, if you search for Airy Group, you'll find us, but this website link there will be available within this package. We provide a lot of information there of importance. We provide a contact form that if you're interested in finding out more about us, you can fill out this form and submit it, and one of our agents will be in contact with you to take the relationship to the next step. We also provide a blog out there with some timely and relevant conversations that isn't necessarily about selling our products, but trying to keep our clientele and our general public informed about new things that are happening in the industry. A typical blog. I am going to harp on this one more time because this is the most important part, and it's why compliant banking is important. We will protect your businesses through providing records for audits and tax purposes, which satisfies the Mexico rules for financial record keeping. We'll be able to validate your cash sales as income, and we will be able to ensure deposits up to $250,000, which is that NCUA insuring guarantee. Now, by doing that, we're going to protect the industry as well. And this is just as important in our eyes, as well as, you know, some of the associations that we all, and you should be a part of too. We want to ensure that all principal owners, operators, and employees are vetted, making this industry valid, improving the integrity of the industry, overcoming stereotypical assumptions that a cannabis business can only be quote unquote illegal or illicit. We will ensure all your transactions are validated. Again, this helps ensure that there is no money laundering going on. There are no bad actors in the industry. We will not allow bad actors to be part of your vendor chain and or part of our clientele. And what this is able to do is protect New Mexicans by ensuring that cash is handled securely. Again, I talked about the courier service. You won't have to set up an employee. If you're a dispensary and you're taking cash, you won't have to make an employee responsible for taking a satchel of cash and make a local deposit to the bank. We'll be able to come and pick that up for you. We will incentivize a legal business mode of operations. The more you do things legally, the easier things become. The more it's easier to do legal business with other legal entities within the industry. And of course, like I said before, we will track and verify sources of cash of your sales so that they can be taxed and entered into the general economy with confidence. Now, that's part of helping New Mexicans as a whole, establishing this industry with the expected revenue that it's going to generate. I talked about the compliance certification, and I get to brag about it a little bit more here. This is a little bit of the information. There's the presentation of it from New Mexico Attorney General Balderas and our Airy team there in the background at one of the U.S. Eagle branches. Again, we are the first financial institution in the country to receive this type of a certification. And that's our contact information. Besides that form, that application form on our site that you can fill out, you can email us directly or call us directly. I would say email us because calling is, you're hoping that one of us is available right then, right there. If you email us or fill out that form, we can gather the information and have a more fruitful conversation with you. Again, I shall also stay on the line here and entertain any questions that you have regarding the financial institution's modus operandi. Thanks.
Thank you, Phil. Appreciate your time. Next up, again, we have two remaining guest speakers. Next up is Shannon Jaramillo, founder and CEO of Seedcrest.
Hello, how are you? See if
Shannon, will you
can
be
see.
sharing your screen?
I will be. I'm going to get it ready right now for you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can you see that now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I think I'm going to keep it in this format, just as the former speakers, so that I can kind of stay organized. So thank you so much. Happy New Year to everybody, first of all. And thanks for having me, and thanks for having Seedcrest. My name is Shannon Jaramillo. I'm the CEO at Seedcrest, and we work with affiliates and cannabis companies here in New Mexico. We have for the last 5 years to recruit, hire, and educate employees who are interested in cannabis. So we've worked with thousands of people, mostly in the discovery stage and then in the compliance training renewal stages, and to help companies to find great talent. So that's a nutshell of what we do, but we do so much more. This past year, we partnered with local colleges to license our cannabis curriculum to colleges to start filling educational gaps as well that lend to labor shortages. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So I want to make sure that we're positioning ourselves as a resource so that people in the Las Cruces area and all over New Mexico can utilize and leverage our expertise at Seedcrest. So let me go ahead and start talking about some of the challenges that we're up against as business owners and even workforce in the industry. So across the US, job growth in the cannabis industry seems to be outpacing the ability to fill job roles. According to an article by Leafly, an annual cannabis report found that nearly 250,000 full-time jobs are currently supported by legal cannabis, and that was as of January 2020. And boy, that's grown since we really, have seen the pandemic, even because the cannabis industry has been deemed essential as well across the country. So Leafly also had an article in 2019, and in that article, they suggested that the legal marijuana or cannabis industry is the fastest growing industry in America. So with that said, let's talk about labor challenges and how can we try to fill them or fill the gaps, and what companies can do to ensure that they're addressing these gaps as they're building a plane while flying it, along with the legislators, right? So when I mention a significant labor shortage, I also mean in New Mexico, and particularly amongst higher level or mid to executive or C-suite job roles and candidates. So what is that? Like your managers, your operations manager, your director of cultivation, right? Or even your human resources individuals at companies are hard to source. And that is not only because of the COVID pandemic, but it's also because of the gaps in education that exist for special skills training. At Seedcrest, we found some formula that works for the industry. And it seems to be that as these individuals are pivoting into the industry, they're basically able to bring their skill set. And then we've got to really offset that deficit by teaching cannabis terminology, policy courses, how to navigate state systems, and create that even playing field that promotes equity overall, right? And we can fill the regulations and the legislators and the communities really trying to grab a hold of that so that we all have access to these opportunities and resources. So with that said, when we look at the industry, the recent passing of the Cannabis Regulation Act puts us on track to create over 11,000 jobs, right? And that doesn't mean that we don't already have people working in the industry. So by the second or third year, 2023, 2024, we're looking at a growth of about 15,000 jobs, including medical and adult use, which for somebody in my seat as a recruiter means that we're going to have to educate close to 30 to 40,000 to fill those roles ongoing. Okay, so just like similar industries like food and liquor, our legislators and laws have created similar requirements for cannabis-based jobs. So for example, because industry companies and employees will deal with protected health information or PHI, most employees and business models have to be HIPAA compliant, right? So understanding what it takes to train your talent per the regulations, per the industry standard, per state and federal law is going to be key for your businesses. Another thing that employees will need to understand are basically procedures around how to ID customers. So it's very different to ID a medical versus an adult use customer and to interact and to allow purchasing, right? So we want to make sure that we're training around these little pieces to mitigate our own risk, and companies are creating standard operating procedures, emergency operating procedures, and overall just procedures that move with the industry, and that you're always revisiting that foundation so that you can make sure that you're updating. I've been to dispensaries before, and some employees are still talking about regulations and passing it along to the consumers from 2018. And this is an industry that it moves really quick. So I really encourage you. And I think it was said earlier to have somebody on your team that understands this policy and is constantly involved and being updated. Another piece is having crime prevention and training for your employees as well, and setting the tone, and that being a major part of your standard. It's not only regulated by the Cannabis Control Division and in a lot of the regulations that you have these types of trainings, but it's going to help you in the long run to be more competitive and to offer a better position, right? And this is becoming a highly competitive industry. So as I mentioned before, the cannabis industry is showing a huge crossover of workforce, and people are pivoting their skill sets due to the pandemic and many factors in just looking for new opportunities with better benefits, more work-life balance. We have a lot of people from the service industry, bartending, restaurant, and even the medical industries coming into cannabis and looking for employment, pivoting their skill sets into our field. And just like with alcohol, cannabis workers will have to have a cannabis server permit. That seems to be one of the next steps for the regulators. More to come on that, right? So, something to mention on this call is that employees will have to be 21 or older, as well as people purchasing cannabis at the adult use level, okay? So only 18-year-olds who are, who have a caregiver and who have approvals through the medical cannabis program can engage in the medical supply of cannabis. So these are things that you really want to know, and that things that experts in the field can help you to wrap your mind around for your company. So when we think about the cannabis workforce, we're still really over dramatized and stigmatized. And I have this here for us to think about. This is what the public thinks of cannabis professionals, right? And I'm sure some of you, as you're setting up your businesses, are even rubbing up against this stigma and how you're being treated, even in the business community. And that has to do with federal stigma and the federal scheduling of cannabis still being illegal. So when you enter the field, you have to know right off the bat, you're breaking federal law, right? And so you must know those state laws and how they play over into that. But when you look at the workforce, I want you to be thinking, who are they really? And when you actually take a look at the workforce, you're really seeing scientists, medical professionals, horticulture, plant biology, horticulture specialists, plant biologists, botanists. You're seeing some of the cream of the crop really studying this and analyzing at the quality assurance level. And so a lot of people really do aspire to validate their own work environment and their own job in cannabis by having access to professional pathways. And Seedcrest is on track to help New Mexico to have those professional pathways and to fill those educational gaps. So it's important that when we're breaking the stigma related to working in cannabis, we're all speaking, cannabis terminology that's professional, and that we understand that in order to foster an educated and safe and a healthy ecosystem where we can really make these economic promises come to fruition, that we are in fact encouraging education, supporting educators in the community, and really taking on a standard with our own companies. So jobs in the cannabis industry encompass all different professional sectors such as legal, medical, scientific, agricultural, manufacturing, and the like. And so when we think of these, we're thinking, where are we going to get the talent for all of these sectors, right? And ongoing talent. So at Seedcrest, we do have a robust talent pipeline available that we've been working with. Just this last year, we certified over 250 people at the college level, and that was really exciting. So as we build more bridges for individuals, we're able to give companies a different type of a talent pipeline where people actually do speak the language, right? And that cuts down on a lot of upfront cost when you're looking at cost per hire and even cost of turnover. So in looking at the industry overall and, how can employers really take on a strategy to combat labor shortages, it's become that now people aren't just dying to work for anybody. They actually have a choice, and they have more competitive benefits packages out there. Cannabis companies are starting entry level at about $15. Some of the really small companies may be between 13 and 15, but the standard for entry level has really shifted and gone from $15 to $17 an hour. And some of the high end roles that are harder to fill, some employers are going to have to really be competitive, and they may even have to relocate talent across the state. So putting together a solid recruitment, educational, hiring, and onboarding plan is going to be your best friend when you're starting a business in the cannabis industry. We are working with local colleges, as I mentioned, and we are working with, particularly now, CNM Ingenuity to build pipeline. And as we affiliate with companies that are cannabis companies, we bring them to the table to meet our talent. So if we can help you in the future, let us know. My contact information is on this slide here. You can reach out to me at Shannon, SHANON, at seedcrest.io, or you can call or text at 505-550-4294. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Shannon. Appreciate your time. Next up, we have our final guest speaker for today. She is a big part of putting this seminar together, so we appreciate her. She will be speaking on the topic of Small Business Development Center in New Mexico, and she is the president and CEO of our Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce. Debbie Moore, thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Can you hear me okay? I've had some technical issues.
Yeah, we can hear you fine. Debbie, will you be sharing your PowerPoint, or do you want us to share it?
I think they have it. Yes, I'm on my phone, so.
Okay, we'll set it
I
up.
think they've got it. So first of all, while Irene's setting it up, I just want to thank Irene and Francisco and the staff. And of course, you, Connie, for allowing the Chamber the opportunity to co-sponsor this seminar, these 2 days. And I just want to recognize, I know I have one board member in the audience, Brandy Darden, who is one of our vice chairs and is over the Grow Your Business section, which has to do with growing your business. So I can't see her, but she can wave to the crowd. So Brandy, thank you for joining today. I am speaking to you behalf of the Small Business Development Center and the Chambers of Commerce on the available services. SBDC, next slide, I think, Irene. That's who I am, and there's my contact information. Next slide. So currently, due to the federal rules, the SBDC is not permitted to provide their normal one-on-one counseling services to existing or planned cannabis businesses. However, the next slides will give you some opportunity for some very specific services that they do offer. Next slide. There's no cost training. It's very general, resource available on the SBDC website. And in response to COVID, there is a 91-page disaster preparedness guide, which is really applicable to all businesses, but certainly during the time of COVID. Next slide. By accessing the nmsbdc.org, you're going to find the links to the local trainings. We have some in Las Cruces and Diana County through the SBDC at Diana Community College, as well as there's a statewide workshop and events, and you'll find those calendars all at that website. Next slide. So under the tab under SBDC, if you're starting your business, you have lots of accessibility to checklists, how to write a business plan, how to write a marketing plan, things that will help you, guide you through the process of starting a business, particularly in the cannabis industry. Again, SBDC cannot give you one-on-one, but they offer you opportunities. The Chamber does stand ready to help you with resourcing as well. Next slide. So you will find 14 answers to questions, which I always say, what business should I choose? Typically with this cannabis, you've already chosen one. How long will it take to write a business plan? That is really key, particularly with this is a brand new industry in the state of New Mexico. And so with the assistance of our LD and our local city and county, they will help you and guide you. And we're all here on board to help your business be successful. Next slide. Again, this refers to the fillable SBA resource prepared response to disaster and recovery. And this guide is really handy. It has numerous checklists and handouts to help you. Next slide. From the Chamber standpoint, your Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce, in partnership with the other two, the Las Cruces Hispanic and Las Cruces Green Chamber, we can provide general business information. We can give you access to government agencies and information, and we can actually partner with the city and the county on other issues to provide these tools via virtually or via in person, or we can do one-on-one and we can create them together. So we want to work with best practices in our area. I've been approached by several organizations that are already have best practices, and so you'll be seeing more from your Chamber of Commerce, and I would greatly appreciate it and tell you that the city is a real great partner to send out that information as well. Next slide. And I stand ready for questions and comments. Again, thank you to the city for the opportunity for the Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce to partner with you. Thank you, Connie.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay, so that is all our guest speakers for the second half of today's seminar. We will head to Q&A. Francisco will be leading Q&A if there's any questions. We do have microphones from Donald and Cruz on my left and right. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny, and thank you to the panelists that presented wonderful resources right now. We do have a question from the online side, and the question is, I think it's kind of like in a twofold. The question is whether the collateral assistance program can be used for bank loans, but also can it also be used for private loans that are not necessarily from a bank? Have you seen that happening in your institutions? And I think this question would be more towards the financial resources panelists.
Hi, this is Shannon. I'll address that one. Right now, we are just beginning to lend in the cannabis arena. As I said, it's very restrictive. It has to be an existing customer for a period of time, and they have to be in good standing with our program, and it's only commercial real estate based. Now, will that evolve as time goes forward? I can see that it will, as the lending test passes federal scrutiny. Right now, everybody's just a little scared to jump into it. And as I said, we're taking a big risk by doing it, but we're trying to mitigate those risks with our underwriting guidelines.
Thank you, Shannon. Anything, Phil, from your end? Sorry, or anyone else?
Well, I would just state that we do not currently offer any lending services, unfortunately. Like Southwest, US Eagle, and Airy is pursuing a way to do that. We just don't have a good solution yet. But, the market is there. We're anxious to help our clients and New Mexicans get that funding that they need. So it's a matter of time, and it's a matter of getting in our case, the NCUA familiar and comfortable with it. But I don't have a timetable, so I can't tell you much more than that.
Thank you so much for that, Phil. And we'll turn to the audience now. Questions from the audience, and we have a couple of microphones going around, and we have one question from a gentleman.
My question was just about funding. Like, can we accept funding from friends and family, or is there certain legal issues with that? And like, what other types of funding can we accept that don't come from banks?
The question, I don't know if the panelists were able to hear it, is whether individuals can accept funding from their friends and family, and what are some of the legal issues with regards to that?
This is Shannon. I can't speak to the legal issues, but I have seen investments come from all arenas, from friends and family, from other businesses investing into startups. So I don't think that there's an issue with it. You would need to disclose that to your banker, what your source of funds is, how you have vetted those funds, and give any information required. I can't, as to the legality, that would probably be a question for Robert at the state level.
Thank you for that, Shannon. Do we have another question? We have another question.
Hello, I have a question for Seedcrest, for Shannon Jaramillo. My question is that us veterans, we want to enter the workforce, and we also, under the VA, cannabis is still legal. So how are we going to, merge these laws into us veterans getting into the cannabis workforce?
Well, that's a good question. I know that we have a lot of government employees and veterans and folks that want to get involved and start learning, and that federal legality does stifle, some of the other pieces of your life that are very important to you, right? Like receiving veterans benefits and everything. I think it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. I do know a lot of veterans that work in the workforce currently, sir. And so if you want to hash it out further and get closer to Seedcrest, we offer career advisement every Thursday at 4:20 online on Google. And I'm happy to put in the chat here my email for you. Email me, and then we can really start to look at this. But you do qualify to work. There's not a lot of assistance out right now due to the federal legality and the federal scheduling of cannabis. And what I mean by that is, traditional monies are not being used for even college students. And so there's probably a gap there in funding and helping, but I am also tied to some groups that are working on this, and I can turn you on to those groups as well so that you can gain more resources.
Thank you, Shannon. Additional questions from the public? One question over here.
Yes, I do have one more additional question. This is either for Shannon or Phil. In regards to the federal regulation on our banking, pursuant to the tax code 280E, where the federal trafficking is, have you seen with clients that it actually helps to go to your bank with experience with that? So that for our tax purposes, as far as, writing off only cost of goods served, sold versus, traditional tax exemptions?
I can jump in on that, and Shannon, you can correct me if I'm wrong even, but there are certain things in the cannabis industry that you can and cannot write off, especially in your operations side of things. I'm not going to say that I'm an expert at it, but there are experts out there that you should consult. Your question centered more about when you're coming to open an account, I think, if it is beneficial that you have experience with that. And I would say any experience that you have in running a business and any experience or education, expertise that you have in the cannabis industry is always going to be beneficial when you are opening up that relationship with your financial institution and instituting that ongoing trust and camaraderie is essentially what it is, or a partnership that you'll end up having.
And I would say that I agree with what Phil has said. The more expertise you can have, the better. I would strongly recommend that you reach out and speak with an expert in the cannabis industry as to what you can and can't write off. There are CPAs that specialize in that area. The banks don't necessarily give that kind of advice, but the more you know, the better off you are.
Thank you so much, Phil and Shannon. Additional questions from the public? We have a couple more questions over here.
Yes, thank you. I think this question is for Mr. Sachs. I was very concerned that there has not been a 100% correct application submitted to you. So pardon me if this is a silly question, but I wanted to clarify something on water rights. If I'm a current water utility customer with the city of Las Cruces, but my cannabis company is yet to come online, what is best practice for the water confirmation letter that I'm going to be asking from utilities to give to you for my application? Is it okay that the water is still in the name of my holding company for real estate and not in the cannabis company?
I think Mr. Sachs left the meeting. I think that what we can do is that we can provide the email address for Mr. Sachs and address the question with regards to water rights. I don't see him in the panelist anymore. I think he left at the beginning on the first Q&A. We do have a second question from the lady up front. The same question. Got it. Got it. So we'll put you in contact with Mr. Sachs for his email for that specific question. Additional questions from the audience? We have one more.
Good morning. My question is in regards to the workforce and in hiring. Is it okay to hire if the individual has a felony?
The question, I think, should be for Ms. Shannon with Seedcrest, whether for the workforce related issues, whether they can hire former felons.
My answer to that is, according to the Cannabis Regulation Act and the regulations, no. business owners and their employees cannot have a felony background. However, we do have the Expungement Act that was passed this last year as well. So that is a case-by-case situation. If it's a marijuana-only felony, they may qualify for expungement. What I do suggest you do, ma'am, is, and anybody here that's questioning any type of a compromised background, I call it, that may hinder them or become a barrier to entry, is just to run it through the Department of Public Safety, just like the State Department would do, the CCD, and look at it yourself and then work from there. They're going to run a state and a federal background on you, and you can get similar backgrounds run on yourself so that you can see how they're going to come back. I have helped felons get into this business, so it's not impossible, but it is a barrier, right? So let's take it case by case.
And we have a couple additional questions. One right here at the bottom.
Is like, what is Robert doing for New Mexico? Because like the media is saying that we're like a great state to, celebrate social equity in cannabis. What is the CDD or CDC doing for the applicants and social equity? How do we celebrate this?
I think that the question is with regards to equity and whether the and the question, just to repeat it to the panel and the people in Zoom. Is there any information with regards to equity in regards to the permits that are being issued by the state? Is there anything that anyone from the panel would be able to answer with regards to that?
I maybe can chime in just a little bit. Social equity, I was on the marijuana working group, and I don't think that anybody has all the answers. Nationally, social equity is a huge challenge, right? So I think little by little, we're going to see things progressing, and there's always that gap between law and regulations coming out and how they play out. So we've got to be a strong voice. I appreciate the woman's comment and the person's comment around it, because it is super important that we create an even playing field. We're not there yet by any means. I don't speak on Robert's behalf nor on behalf of the CCD, but from my perspective, we're working on it little by little, even through different state funding initiatives for education and different groups. And so if you have any recommendations about how social equity can be promoted or fulfilled for the state of New Mexico, please do submit public comments to the CCD and the Cannabis Regulatory Advisory Committee and groups like Seedcrest as well, so that we can make sure that we are all a unified voice on that. But that's a great point. We do have to create more of a social an even playing field. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Shannon. And we have an additional question.
I want to see if there's going to be any like tax credits if we hire any like veterans or students that may be in that cannabis program where the business itself will benefit from it from the state.
The question is whether there's going to be any tax credits for hiring individuals in the programs related to training for the workforce here in the cannabis industry in New Mexico, or veterans.
I guess I can jump in on that. I don't have any indicators quite yet, but they haven't ironed out all of those pieces yet. So I think that's a great idea. And I do know that there are groups that want to hire in disproportionately impacted areas and want to hire people of color and want to really promote this piece, veterans and people affected by the war on drugs. So I'll bring that up. If I'd love to have an email from you on that, sir, that made that comment. And I think Robert at the CCD and those folks would love to hear that as well as they iron things out on that topic.
Thank you so much for that, Shannon. And additionally, for all the members here, there is a sign-in sheet for which we're going to be providing some of the information that we just presented, the link to the page, the information of the speakers. So if you did sign in, there's a section right there in which you put your email address. For the people in Zoom, we have all of your email addresses also listed, and we'll follow up from the Economic Development Department of the city with additional information from all the contact information of what you're seeing right here. So you'll be able to see Shannon's email, and you'll be able to see Robert's email and everybody's email in that aspect. Additionally to that, Ikani?
Thank you, everyone. And we're at the time where we're concluding. I know we fell a bit behind, but we appreciate everyone's patience. Can we get a round of applause from the audience for our panel members? Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. We have, just to share a few numbers, we had about 70 people who came in person, and we had about 100 people join us online. So this was really a great success to everyone, to the panelists, to you all, and especially to the staff who made this. Also, we have Francisco and Irene Parra, and we have Debbie Moore who helped put this together. So recognition to you all again. Thank you for putting this together. And again, to all the organizations, just as a friendly reminder, as you walk out, just to remember tomorrow, same place, same time, 10 a.m. We will have a local legislation, local county. It will be zoning, water, building, fire. We'll have police, we'll have economic development, tourism, and even the county will have planning and zoning here. So this will be perfect for those who are interested locally. And then also, if you're interested in this video, you can find this on our cannabis webpage for City of Las Cruces. Just Google cannabis, City of Las Cruces, go to the webpage. By the end of business tomorrow, we'll link it in the same place. And then we'll have it on the YouTube page as well for the City of Las Cruces. So thank you so much to everyone and to our panelists. We appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you to all the panelists.